No amount of faith in the mainstream media survives first contact with the mainstream media. When they write about something or someone you know, or worse still, write about you, it becomes immediately obvious that the objective is not to seek or reveal the truth. It's to advance an agenda. If this sounds a little out there or conspiratorial, I understand, because that's how I used to think as well. The job of journalists is to expose government corruption, corporate malfeasance, and report the news, right? Last week, I was contacted by an NBC journalist for an interview about Elon Musk's comments about what is happening in Europe. What follows is the full, unedited recording of that conversation. Listen for yourself and see if you still think these people are neutral observers who believe that their job is to objectively report on the truth. It's important to understand this is not about this individual journalist. I don't want people having a go at him, and I'm not having a go at him. The issue here is the entire media machine and the way that it operates. Check it out for yourself.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm also fantastic. I'm on the weekend. Thank you for making the time to speak with me.
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess it was a tweet from, I think, last October, where it was right after the terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israel. There were protests in Europe, some of them supporting Palestinians. You were tweeting about that, and then Musk responded to you. If current trends continue, civil war in Europe is inevitable. And then, of course, he tweeted something similar about a week ago and got into this back and forth with Dear Sturmer and others on sort of a similar subject of whether civil war in Europe is inevitable. I think he used that same word again, inevitable. And I guess really I'm just sort of curious about your reaction to sort of his sort of repeated prediction that a civil war is inevitable. Do you think it's accurate? Do you think he is onto something? Do you disagree, or what's your reaction?
He's 100% right.
What do you think? What do you think that would look like?
I don't think anybody knows. What we do know is if this continues, then there will be... I don't know if civil war is necessarily the way that it will go. No one knows how these things go in history. But the fact that he's pointing to the very simple observation that societies in many European countries are incredibly divided, economically stagnant, have imported large numbers of people from a completely different culture and religion, and the demographic side of these conversations obviously matters as well. If you put all that together and you play the movie forward, it's not an unreasonable prediction. Nobody knows how the future will pan out, but based on what we are seeing with our own eyes now, it's quite possible.
Mm-hmm. I guess about 10 months or so have passed since Musk tweeted that. I don't think we're in a civil war now, but do you think we are? And if we're not, at what point do you say that Musk was wrong about that? Is ever, or
Sorry, are you under the impression that Elon Musk is suggesting that a civil war is imminent?
You did not use the word.
No, and he doesn't mean imminent. He said on current trends. So he's talking about very long-term trends that happen over a long period of time. Nobody knows whether it will happen 10 years from now or 30 years from now, and no one's able to predict that. What he's looking at is the direction of travel. And what he's saying, if you go to New York and you drive west from New York, eventually you're going to get to California. That's all he's saying, right? So when you ask me, forgive me, I'm not being rude, but I don't understand how you can ask me if I think we're in the civil war now. Obviously not. A civil war would look like tens of thousands of people killing each other on a daily basis. We're obviously not in that position, and no one is saying that we are. And by the way, something I think it's important for you to remember is that when we talked about those comments he made 10 months ago, you said there were some people who were protesting for the Palestinians. Actually, the thing that many of us were reacting to at the time was the fact that there were protests on the streets of major European cities before Israel had even retaliated. So they were not there to protest for Palestine. They were there to celebrate the mass slaughter that had just taken place in Israel. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
That's fair for sure. Do you think Musk is using this term civil war in a sort of classic sense of civil war, where there is a rebel group that is seeking to overthrow the government, or is he speaking just more generally about street violence or terrorist attacks or other kinds of political violence?
I have absolutely no idea. You're going to have to ask him.
Do you think there will be like a rebel group that is armed and organized and trying to overthrow the UK government?
I have absolutely no idea. As I said to you earlier, nobody knows what exactly it's going to look like. In the metaphor I gave you, when you drive west from New York, you will eventually get to California, but how exactly you're going to get there, which road you're going to take, what is going to happen to you on the way, etc., nobody knows. What Elon Musk is doing is pointing out the fact that Europe is moving in a particular direction on demographics, on economics, on multiculturalism, and these are all perfectly valid points. Doesn't mean he knows or is able to predict exactly how it's going to pan out. Nobody can.
Right, but I'm saying that, a civil war, by definition, is an armed rebel group.
No, it's not. Not even remotely, by definition, is a civil war that. A civil war is two groups of people within one society fighting each other on a national scale.
But I think by definition, one of those parties is going to be the incumbent government.
I don't know why you know that. We have absolutely no idea what it could or couldn't look like in the future.
I mean, if you look up, any definition of civil war in academic literature, it is the incumbent government battling, as a belligerent, battling at least one armed rebel group.
Well, the rebelliousness of the group or otherwise is kind of a historical issue, right? There are some civil wars that were won by the people you might describe as a rebel group. They wouldn't consider themselves as a rebel group. They would consider themselves a portion of society that had a problem with the other portion of society. I don't understand why we're getting bogged down in this.
Well, because you use this term very specifically, civil war, and you certainly agree with them. Do you think that, are the immigrants going to arm themselves and organize and overthrow Westminster?
The immigrants?
The other way around.
I am an immigrant myself. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm trying to understand the prediction of a civil war.
Okay.
And does that
Elon Musk is an immigrant to America. Are you seriously suggesting that he's concerned about immigrants taking up arms against the government?
I'm trying to understand what you said. So he tweeted about this 8 times in the past year.
Yeah.
Saying that we're headed to a civil war in Europe. Civil war is inevitable. And generally what people mean by a civil war is that there is a armed group that wants to overthrow the government. So, or I guess the secession type situation. And who would be the belligerent, I guess, is the question.
I don't know, as I said to you repeatedly, but quite often civil wars, as you said yourself, happen in the situations of succession when there isn't a widely accepted particular government. So civil war is a term that people use that covers quite a number of eventualities. But most of all, I don't understand why you're asking me what Elon Musk may or may not think.
Well, because you were in a competition with him.
Okay.
And I think your reply, actually, was that civil war, fight, someone will fight back based on the current evidence. I'm not sure that will happen.
Right.
I guess let me ask you this: who do you think should fight back?
Are you, forgive me, are you under the impression that either I or Elon Musk want a civil war?
No, I know.
So then why would you ask me who I think should fight back? I don't think anyone should fight back because I don't want a civil war. I don't want anyone to be fighting anyone.
Okay. So, I guess who would fight back? Said,
It depends who would be doing the attacking. I have no idea.
okay. All right, Jack. I have any other question for you.
Okay.
Do you think that Musk, by talking about this as often as he has, is he increasing the risk of violence?
I think he is decreasing the risk of violence because what he's attempting to do, in exactly the way that I'm attempting to do, is to say to people rather, do not carry on driving off the cliff. This is not a good thing to do because if we keep doing that, we're going to end up in a worse place. So if people actually pay attention and listen to people like him and take into account and start acting differently and implementing different kinds of policies, that would massively reduce the risk of a civil war, which is precisely what he's trying to do, to reduce that risk when he's predicting that it will happen if we carry on down the path that we're going.
What do you think the demographics of the UK should be?
Excuse me?
What do you think the demographics of the UK should be?
I don't understand the question.
You mentioned earlier about how a lot of this was about demographics.
Yeah.
Changing demographics.
Yeah.
Should the demographics remain the same, or what should the government policy be about demographics?
I don't know that the government has a policy about demographics, nor am I suggesting that there should be one. What I'm saying to you is when you have groups of people who don't share a culture living in the same space, in which their sense of national identity is being eroded and they're not encouraged to think of themselves as British first and everything else second, or American first and everything else second, you create the potential for inter-ethnic violence. And we already have it on the streets of Britain. And it's not just white people or Muslims, it's Muslims versus Sikhs, it's Muslims versus Hindus, etc., etc. So when you have large numbers of people come to a place in a small period of time from different cultural backgrounds who may not even speak the same language, who don't share the same religion, it is natural that those tensions are going to be there. So it's not a question of what I think should be the demographics. What we're pointing out is a policy of open door mass immigration combined with a policy where we have 40,000 people come into the country illegally every year is not working. That's the point we're making. It's not a question of should it be that or should it be this. It's a point that when you do this, the inevitable outcome is inter-ethnic tension.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could you elaborate at all on sort of the sort of cultural I forget the phrase we were just using about the culture of the people who are arriving, immigrants and refugees. It sounds like you think there's not a good fit for the existing culture of the UK.
It's not that they are not a good fit. It's that different cultures are different. They have different values. They have different levels of compatibility. It's not that one is necessarily bad, although some cultures are worse than others for sure. It's the fact that coexisting together takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. And in a society that increasingly fails to do that, does not encourage people to integrate, does not encourage them to live with other people who are not like them, but rather allows them to live in pockets in which they don't actually engage with the broader British public, that can cause tensions. And it already is.
So what specifically should immigrants to assimilate or integrate more that they're currently doing?
Well, as a very simple example, I used to live in a part of East London that I think is over 40% Bangladeshi. When I went to my doctor in that area, I was given a leaflet that had been translated into about 50 languages. So what that tells me is there are quite a lot of people living in that area, as there are in many other parts of the UK, that don't even bother to learn the language. And they're not being encouraged or helped to do so. Now, it's very difficult to integrate with other people when you don't even have a common language.
Okay. Anything else that on the subject that you want to add?
Only that I think your line of questioning is very strange. Like Elon Musk is not saying anything other than we should not pursue policies that are bad for our country. That includes bad for the people on all sides of every cultural difference and everything else. A country that has strife is a bad place to be for everybody. And what he's attempting to do is to encourage people in Europe not to go down that path.
Well, let me give you just a little more context of what I'm writing about. So, I've been asking other people about traditions in the Civil War. I spoke with one person who said that if a dog whistle, a sort of coded language about wits, and that Musk is, although he doesn't explicitly call for a civil war, that rhetorically there's a little difference between repeatedly predicting one, saying it's unavoidable, and...
He's not saying, well, this is the difference. He's not saying it's unavoidable. He said the exact opposite. He said, if we continue to do what we are doing. That's the same as someone saying, if we continue to drive off this cliff, we're going to fall off it. It's not the same as wanting us to fall off the cliff. On the contrary, it's he's imploring us not to drive off the cliff. So that I think is important to say. Then the other point, sorry, just to finish what I'm saying, on this idea that that he's concerned about the race of the people involved. Elon Musk is on record saying repeatedly that he is pro more immigration as long as it's legal and beneficial to the host country.
No, so a couple of points there. So when he tweeted at you, this was last October, he said it's current trend continues. But more recently, he has not included that qualification. He has just said, his tweet a couple weeks ago with, quote, civil war is inevitable.
Yeah.
Which makes it, he's not qualifying it. He's saying it is.
Well, yeah, if you take those two things together, what I think he's saying is, I've been warning about this for many, many years, as he has been, as I have been. And when you see riots of the scale and nature that we just saw in the UK, when you see hundreds of armed men, both white thugs and Muslim thugs, on the streets of the same cities attempting to fight each other, that is yet another sign that we're heading down the wrong track. So if he's now convinced that, given the current government that we have and the broader direction of travel in the UK, culturally and politically, right, we've just had 14 years of a conservative government that hasn't done anything about any of these issues and in fact has made them worse. So if you take the comparison with when he was talking and now, he could be thinking, this is continuing to get worse, and I just don't see anyone on the political scene who's going to turn this around. And if that's how he's thinking, again, he's 100% right.
Okay. One other thing, speaking about the recent violence in the UK, most of it was perpetrated by anti-immigrant forces. Should we be more concerned about violence by them, or more concerned about violence by immigrants?
I do not understand why you keep framing this as immigrants.
Migration, refugees,
No. The violence was not When I said there were gangs on the street with knives attacking people, it was not Portuguese people or Ukrainians or Hong Kongers. Most of those people were British born. They're not immigrants.
So I guess my question is, the critics of, do you think one side is more likely to turn to violence than another in terms of in the immigration debate?
Well, as I just explained to you, that we just saw on the streets that there is a willingness on both sides to become aggressive and threatening and to carry weapons, right? So, yes, in this particular instance, the riots were those rioters were anti-immigration, a lot of them, and many of them would have just been there because they like to burn things down or blow shit up because they don't have a job, right?
People are burning down mosques.
I don't believe anyone burned down a mosque, no.
I think if you look up the news, fine.
Let me look it up right now. Yeah, so nobody burned down a mosque. You really should check your facts.
And maybe a hack on a mosque is a more accurate term. Maybe not burned down, but there were attacks on mosques.
Yeah, people threatened mostly to burn down a mosque, which is a terrible thing to do. But we also had riots the week prior, which were immigrant descended people burning down police cars and police buses, etc. So this is the point I'm trying to make to you repeatedly. There's violence happening from different areas, and that is what Elon Musk is concerned about. He's not saying this particular one group is the threat and we must all focus on it. He's saying the situation overall is not a good situation.
Do you think he, so one reason that I'm calling you is because Elon Musk hasn't really spoken about this. He's had these sporadic tweets predicting a civil war, but he hasn't really spoken in depth, I don't believe, about this idea. Have you heard him talk in greater detail about this, or do you think he should?
I don't know Elon Musk personally, so I've only heard what you've heard.
Okay. Well, to be clear, I have also reached out to him, asking for clarification on what he means when he's predicting a civil war, and
given some of the questions you've been asking me, I'm not positive that he's going to want to speak to you. You don't seem like you're coming at this from an angle of curiosity. You seem like you've already got a story and you're just trying to write that story.
Which questions do you mean specifically?
Most of the questions you've asked me.
I mean, I apologize if you've gotten an impression, but my intent is I feel like I've been asking very open-ended questions about...
No, you've been suggesting answers to... You've been asking me, is it about this, or is it because he's concerned about race, or is it because of immigrants, or whatever, right? Which is completely misframing this entire conversation. And you keep putting things to me like some idiot told you that Elon Musk wants a civil war. What a moronic thing to say. Why would you even bring that up? You honestly think Elon Musk wants people to be murdering each other en masse in Europe? That's what Elon Musk wants.
Now you're putting words in my mouth.
Am I?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
You said to me, I've spoken to somebody who said this is a dog whistle, and this is what he's trying to say it because he wants that outcome. He's trying to encourage violence.
I quoted that to you because...
I know. Why? Why would you quote some idiot? Why would you even include that in your conversation of the story? That's a preposterous thing to assume about somebody.
An expert in extremism and political violence who works at a university.
So what? It's a preposterous thing to suggest. You think Elon Musk whose mission is to build spaceships to take us to another planet for the sole reason that we could preserve humanity across multiple planets. That guy, what he deeply, deeply wants is a civil war in Europe, and that's what he's trying to encourage. And just because this person went to university, you think that makes that a legitimate point of view? It's absurd.
I mean, the question I'm trying to answer is, why does Elon Musk seem to spend so much time reading and thinking about civil war?
Because he's really, really concerned about it.
Okay. Well, that's my question, really. Is why is he doing that? And actually, you give me an answer.
So do I.
Should be fixed.